Greetings everyone, my name is Gigi and this is Let's Build, wherein I build a LEGO set timed to different media and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is the LEGO Tranquil Garden versus the game Ghosts of Tsushima. The footage I am using for this game is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. I apologize in advance for pronouncing names or places incorrectly. There will be some plot spoilers for the game Ghosts of Tsushima, but I will avoid giving away the ending. You have been warned. Moving on to our LEGO set with the specifications. Enjoy a mindful building project with the LEGO Icons Tranquil Garden building set for adults. Unwind with this relaxing activity as you craft each beautiful detail and enjoy rearranging the flora to create that perfect look to display in the corner of your home or office. A feature-rich garden. Based on traditional Japanese garden, this buildable model includes an arched bridge, stream, koi carp, lotus flowers, trees, rocks, stone lanterns, and a pavilion with a detailed tea ceremony room. Welcome to the zone. Discover a space for relaxation with the LEGO Icons Tranquil Garden, a haven for adults and a great gift idea for gardening and mindfulness enthusiasts. Check out the inspiring range of LEGO building sets for adults. Build and tend a beautiful garden. Take time out with this LEGO Icons Tranquil Garden mindful building project for adults. What's in the box? Everything you need to build a Zen garden model with a pavilion, arched bridge, stream, koi carp, lotus flowers, trees, rocks, and stone lanterns. Customize your display. Slots in the base of the Zen garden model make rearranging easy, so you can create different configurations for display in the home or office. A mindful gift. The LEGO Icons Tranquil Garden is designed for adult fans of LEGO building and creative gardening projects. Authentic accessories. LEGO accessories include a teapot and whisk, digital building instructions. The LEGO Builder app features a digital version of the building instructions included with this set. Dimensions: measures over 8 inches high, 12.5 inches wide, and 8 inches deep. Step into the moment. Discover the LEGO Icons Tranquil Garden, part of a range of building sets designed for adult building fans. Quality materials. LEGO building bricks are manufactured from high-quality materials. They are consistent, compatible, and connect easily every time. It's been that way since 1958. These days, being in nature is becoming a rare occurrence. We are in an urban, technologically dependent society, but we need nature to relate to each other and to understand ourselves. This LEGO Tranquil Garden, inspired by Japanese gardens, at least symbolically brings nature to your mind, which is one of the most important things for our lives now. Hoichi Kurisu, the Japanese garden designer and builder. Created for mindful living. Follow the stepping stones to your private pavilion. Make yourself at home, relax, and be one with nature for a moment. Or stay as long as you like. Inspired by the elements of millennia-old tranquil gardening traditions, this set has been created in collaboration with Hoichi Kurisu, who has several years of experience in creating mindful gardens, a serene retreat where you can reflect and recharge without distractions. Each element in the garden lets you dwell on the colorful wonders and playful beauty of Mother Earth. As you spend time with your garden, allow the seasons to come and go. Feel your creativity blossom with each visit, rearrange the scenery, plant new LEGO vegetation, or add decorative ornaments that are meaningful to you. Prepare a pot of your favorite matcha tea, tune into soothing nature soundtrack, slip into your softest slippers, and take time to enjoy your mind space. Tend to your garden. Building a Lego set can be an immersive escape, like reading a great book. It allows you to focus on something fun and gives you a feeling of pride and gratification, even long after it's completed. You can return to this garden as often as you like, tend to the elements and change the landscape as you would an actual garden, or maybe a bonsai tree. Prune or replant the blossoming cherry trees, lush evergreens and bamboo, or move the smooth stone lanterns to fit your style and mood. Or gaze at the vibrant koi and water lilies in the burbling pond, and simply surrender to your creative freedom. Give the set your own personal touch to match your mood. By the Michael Pisaki and Carl Miriam, LEGO Icons Model Designers. Japanese gardens are traditional gardens whose designs are accompanied by Japanese aesthetics and philosophical ideas, avoid artificial ornamentation, and highlight the natural landscape. Plants and worn, aged materials are generally used by Japanese garden designers to suggest a natural landscape and to express the fragility of existence as well as time's unstoppable advance. Ancient Japanese art inspired past garden designers. Water is an important feature of many gardens, as are rocks and often gravel. Despite there being many attractive Japanese flowering plants, herbaceous flowers generally play a much less of a role in Japanese gardens than in the West. Though seasonally flowering shrubs and trees are important, all the more dramatic because of the contrast with the usual predominant green. Evergreen plants are the bones of the garden in Japan. Though a natural-seeming appearance is the aim, Japanese gardeners often shape their plants, including trees, with great rigor. Japanese literature on gardening goes back to almost 1,000 years, and several different styles of garden have been developed, some with religious or philosophical implications. A characteristic of Japanese gardens is that they are designed to be seen from specific points. Some of the most significant different traditional styles of Japanese garden are the lake spring boat excursion garden, which was imported from China during the Heian period, from 794 to 1185. These were designed to be seen from small boats on the central lake. No original examples of these survive, but they were replaced by the Paradise Garden associated with the Pure Land Buddhism, with a Buddha shrine on an island in the lake. Later, large gardens are often in the promenade garden style, designed to be seen from a path circulating around the garden, with fixed stopping points for viewing. Specialized styles, often small sections in a larger garden, include the moss garden, the dry garden with gravel and rocks, associated with Zen Buddhism, the roji or tea house garden, designed to be seen only from a short pathway, and the sobu niwa, a very small urban garden. Most modern Japanese homes have a little space for a garden, though the tsubo niwa style of tiny gardens in passages and other spaces, as well as bonsai, in Japan always grown outside, and houseplants mitigates this, and domestic garden tourism is very important. The Japanese tradition has long been to keep a well-designed garden as near as possible to its original condition, and many famous gardens appear to have changed little over several centuries, apart from the inevitable turnover of plants in a way that is extremely rare in the West. Awareness of the Japanese style of gardening reached the West near the end of the 19th century and was enthusiastically received as part of the fashion for Japonisme, and as Western gardening taste had by then turned away from rigid geometry to a more naturalistic style, of which the Japanese style was an attractive variant. They were immediately popular in the UK, where the climate was similar and Japanese plants grew well. Japanese gardens, typically a section of a larger garden, continue to be popular in the West, and many typical Japanese garden plants, such as cherry trees, and the many varieties of Acer palmatum, or the Japanese maple, are also used in all types of garden, giving a faint hint of the style to very many gardens. Some history. The ideas central to Japanese gardens were first introduced to Japan during the Asuka period, 6th to 7th century. Japanese gardens first appeared on the island of Honshu, the large central island of Japan. Their aesthetic was influenced by the distinct characteristics of the Honshu landscape: rugged volcanic peaks, narrow valleys, mountain streams with waterfalls and cascades, lakes, and beaches of small stones. They were also influenced by the rich variety of flowers and different species of trees, particularly evergreen trees, on the islands, and by the 4 distinct seasons in Japan, including hot, wet summers and snowy winters. Japanese gardens have their roots in the national religion of Shinto, with its story of the creation of the 8 perfect islands and of the Shinchi, lakes of the gods. Prehistoric Shinto shrines to the kami, the gods and spirits, are often on beaches and in the forests of all over the island. They often took the form of unusual rocks or trees marked with cords of rice fiber, and surrounded with white stones or pebbles, a symbol of purity. The white gravel courtyard became a distinctive feature of Shinto shrines, imperial palaces, Buddhist temples, and Zen gardens. Although its original meaning is somewhat obscure, one of the Japanese words for garden, niwa, came to mean a place that had been cleansed and purified in anticipation of the arrival of kami, and the Shinto reverence for great rocks, lakes, ancient trees, and other dignitaries of nature would exert an enduring influence on Japanese garden design. Japanese gardens are also strongly influenced by the Chinese philosophy of Taoism and Amida Buddhism, imported from China in or around 552 CE. Taoist legends spoke of the 5 mountainous islands inhabited by the 8 immortals, who lived in perfect harmony with nature. Each immortal flew from his mountain home on the back of a crane. The islands themselves were located on the back of an enormous sea turtle. In Japan, the 5 islands of the Chinese legend became one island, called Horai-zen, or Mount Horai. Replicas of this legendary mountain, the symbol of a perfect world, are a common feature in Japanese gardens, as are rocks representing turtles and cranes. Garden elements. Japanese gardens are distinctive in their symbolism of nature, with traditional Japanese gardens being very different in style from Occidental gardens. Western gardens are typically optimized for visual appeal, while Japanese gardens are modeled with spiritual and philosophical ideas in mind. Japanese gardens are conceived as a representation of natural setting, tying in to Japanese connections between the land and Shinto spiritualism, where spirits are commonly found in nature. As such, Japanese gardens tend to incorporate natural materials with the aim of creating a space that captures the beauties of nature in a realistic manner. Traditional Japanese gardens can be categorized into three types: the hill gardens, dry gardens, and tea gardens. The small space given to create these gardens usually poses a challenge for gardeners. Due to the absolute importance of the arrangement of natural rocks and trees, finding the right material becomes highly selective. The serenity of the Japanese landscape and the simple but deliberate structures of the Japanese gardens are a unique quality, with the two most important principles of garden design being scaled reduction and symbolization. Water. Japanese gardens always feature water, either physically with a pond or stream, or symbolically, represented by white sand in a dry rock garden. In Buddhist symbolism, water and stone are thought of as yin and yang, two opposites that complement and complete each other. A traditional garden will usually have an irregular-shaped pond, or in larger gardens, two or more ponds connected by a channel or stream, and a cascade, a miniature version of Japan's most famous mountain waterfalls. In traditional gardens, the ponds and streams are carefully placed according to Buddhist geomancy, the art of putting things in the place most likely to attract good fortune. The rules for the placement of water are laid out in the first manual of Japanese gardens, the Records of Garden Making, in the 11th century. According to the Records of Garden Making, water should enter the garden from the east or southeast and flow toward the west, because the east is the home of the green dragon, an ancient Chinese divinity adopted in Japan, and the west is the home of the white tiger, the divinity of the east. Water flowing from east to west will carry away evil, and the owner of the garden will be healthy and have a long life. According to the Records of Garden Making, another favorable arrangement is the water to flow from north, which represents the water in the Buddhist cosmology, to the south, which represents fire, which are opposites, yin and yang, and therefore will bring good luck. The Records of Garden Making recommends several possible miniature landscapes using lakes and streams: the ocean style, which features rocks that appear to have been eroded by waves, a sandy beach, and pine trees; the broad river style, recreating the course of a large river, winding like a serpent; and the marsh pond style, a large still pond with aquatic plants; the mountain torrent style, with many rocks and cascades; and the rose letters style, an austere landscape with small, low plants, gentle relief, and many scattered flat rocks. Traditional Japanese gardens have small islands on the lakes. In sacred temple gardens, there is usually an island with which represents Mount Penglai or Mount Horai, the traditional home of the Eight Immortals. The Records of Garden Making describes different kinds of artificial island which can be created in the lakes, including the mountainous island, made up of jagged vertical rocks mixed with pine trees, surrounded by a sandy beach; the rocky island, composed of tormented rocks appearing to have been battered by sea waves, along with small ancient pines with the unusual shapes; the cloud island, made of white sand in a rounded white forms of a cumulus cloud; and the misty island, a low island of sand without rocks or trees. A cascade or waterfall is an important element in Japanese gardens, a miniature version of the waterfalls of Japanese mountain streams. The Records of Garden Making describes 7 different kinds of cascades. It notes that if possible, a cascade should face toward the moon and should be designed to capture the moon's reflection in the water. It is also mentioned that cascades benefit from being located in such a manner that they are half hidden in shadows. Rocks and sand. Rocks, sand, and gravel are an essential feature of the Japanese garden. A vertical rock may represent Mount Horai, the legendary home of the Eight Immortals, or Mount Sumeru of Buddhist teaching, or a carp jumping from the river. A flat rock might represent the earth. Sand or gravel can represent a beach or a flowing river. Rocks and water also symbolize yin and yang in Buddhist philosophy. The hard rock and soft water complement each other, and water, though soft, can wear away the rock. Rough volcanic rocks are usually used to represent mountains or as stepping stones. Smooth and round sedimentary rocks are used around lakes or as stepping stones. Hard metamorphic rocks are usually placed by waterfalls or streams. Rocks are traditionally classified as tall vertical, low vertical, arching, reclining, or flat. Rocks should vary in size and color, but from each other, but not have bright colors which would lack subtlety. Rocks with strata or veins should have all the veins all going in the same direction, and the rocks should all be firmly planted in the earth, giving an appearance of firmness and permanence. Rocks are arranged in careful compositions of 2, 3, 5, or 7 rocks, with 3 being the most common. In a 3 arrangement, a tallest rock usually represents heaven, the shortest rock is the earth, and the medium-sized rock is humanity, the bridge between heaven and earth. Sometimes one or more rocks, called nameless or discarded, are placed in seemingly random locations in the garden to suggest spontaneity, though their placement is carefully chosen. In ancient Japan, sand and gravel were used around Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples. Later it was used in the Japanese rock garden or Zen Buddhist gardens to represent water or clouds. White sand represented purity, but sand could also be gray, brown, or bluish-black. Selection and subsequent placement of rocks was and is still a central concept in creating an aesthetically pleasing garden by the Japanese. During the Heian period, the concept of placing stones as symbolic representations of islands, whether physically existent or non-existent, began to take hold, and can be seen in the Japanese word shima, which is of particular importance, because the word contained the meaning island. Furthermore, the principle of obeying or following the request of an object was and still is a guiding principle of Japanese rock design that suggests the arrangement of rocks be dictated by their innate characteristics. This specific placement of stones in Japanese gardens to symbolically represent islands, and later to include mountains, is found to be an aesthetically pleasing property of traditional Japanese gardens. Such attention to detail can be seen at places such as Midori Falls, in Kanroku-en Garden in Kanazawa, Ishikawa Prefecture, as the rocks at the waterfall's base were changed at various times by 6 different daimyo. In Heian period of Japanese gardens, built in the Chinese model, buildings occupied as much more space than the garden. The garden was designed to be seen from the main building and its verandas, from small pavilions built for that purpose. In later gardens, the buildings were less visible. Rustic tea houses were hidden in their own little gardens, and small benches and open pavilions along the garden paths provided places for rest and contemplation. In later garden architecture, walls of houses and tea houses could be opened to provide carefully framed views of the garden. The garden and the house became one. Garden bridges. Bridges first appeared in the garden during the Heian period. At the Boyodo Inn garden in Kyoto, a wooden bridge connects the Phoenix Pavilion with a small island of stones, representing the Mount Pengalai, or Mount Horai, the island home of the 8 immortals of Taoist teaching. The bridge symbolized the path to paradise and immortality. Bridges could be made of stone, or of wood, or made of logs with earth on top, covered with moss. They could be either arched or flat. Sometimes, if they were a part of a temple garden, they were painted red, following the Chinese tradition, but for the most part they are unpainted. During the Edo period, when large promenade gardens became popular, streams and winding paths were constructed with series of bridges, usually in a rustic stone or wood style, to take visitors on a tour of the scenic views of the garden. Stone lanterns and water basins. Japanese stone lanterns date back to the Nara period and the Heian period. Originally, they were located only at Buddhist temples, where they lined the paths and approaches to the temple. But in the Heian period, they began to be used at Shinto shrines as well. According to tradition, during the Momoyama period, they were introduced to the tea garden by the first great tea masters, and in later gardens they were used purely for decoration. In its complete and original form, the Diodoro, like the pagoda, represents the 5 elements of Buddhist cosmology. The piece touching the ground represents Qi, the earth. The next section represents Sui, or water. Ka, or fire, is represented by the section encasing the lantern's light or flame, while Fu is air, and Ku, void or spirit, are represented by the last 2 sections, topmost and pointed toward the sky. The segments express the idea that after death, our physical bodies will go back to their original elemental form. Stone water basins were originally placed in gardens for visitors to wash their hands and mouth before the tea ceremony. The water is provided to the basin by a bamboo pipe, and they usually have a wooden ladle for drinking the water. In tea gardens, the basin was placed low to the ground, so the drinker had to bend over to get water. A shishi odoshi is a garden device made of bamboo and wood, designed to scare away birds. As the bamboo tube fills with water, it clacks against the stone, empties, then fills with water again. Trees and flowers. Nothing in a Japanese garden is natural or left to chance. Each plant is chosen according to aesthetic principles, whether to hide undesirable sights, to serve as a backdrop to certain garden features, or to create a picturesque. Trees are carefully chosen and arranged for their autumn colors. Moss is often used to suggest that the garden is ancient. Flowers are also very carefully chosen by their season of flowering. Formal flower beds are rare in older gardens, but more common in modern gardens. Some plants are chosen for their religious symbolism, such as the lotus, sacred in Buddhist teachings, or pine, which represents longevity. The trees are carefully trimmed to provide attractive scenes and to prevent them from blocking other views of the garden. Their growth is also controlled in a technique called niwaki, to give them more picturesque shapes and to make them look more ancient. It has been suggested that the characteristic shape of pruned Japanese garden trees resembles trees found naturally in savanna landscapes. This resemblance has been used to motivate the so-called savanna hypothesis. Trees are sometimes constrained to bend in order to provide shadows or better reflections in the water. Very old pine trees are often supported by wooden crutches, or their branches are held by cords to keep them from breaking under the weight of snow. In the late 16th century, a new art was developed in Japanese garden, that of okari komi, the technique of trimming branches into balls or rounded shapes which imitate waves. According to tradition, this art was developed by Kobori Enshu from 1579 to 1647, and it was most frequently practiced on azalea bushes. It was familiar to the topiary gardens made in Europe at the same time, except that European topiary gardens tried to make trees look less geometric, solid objects, while Okari Komi sought to make bushes look as if they were almost liquid or flowing natural shapes. It created an artistic play of light on the surface of the bush and, according to garden historian Mikel Buridan, it also brought into play the sense of touching things, which even today succeeds so well in Japanese design. The most common trees and plants found in Japanese gardens are the azalea and camellia, the oak, the elm, the Chinese watering plum, cherry tree, maple, willow, ginkgo, the Japanese cypress, Japanese cedar, pine, and bamboo. Fish. The use of fish, particularly the colored carp, or goldfish, as decorative element in gardens was borrowed from the Chinese garden. Goldfish were developed in China more than 1,000 years ago by selectively breeding Prussian carp for color mutations. By the Song dynasty, from 960 to 1279, yellow, orange, white, and red and white colorations have been developed. Goldfish were introduced to Japan in the 16th century. Koi were developed from common carp in Japan in the 1820s. Koi are domesticated common carp that are selected or culled for color. They are not a different species, and will revert to the original coloration within a few generations if allowed to breed freely. In addition to fish, turtles are kept in some gardens. Natural environments in the gardens offer habitats that attract wild animals. Frogs and birds are notable as they contribute to pleasant soundscape. Aesthetic principles. The early Japanese gardens largely followed the Chinese model, but gradually Japanese gardens developed their own principles and aesthetics. These were spelled out by a series of landscape gardening manuals, beginning with the records of garden making in the Heian period, from 794 to 1185. The principles of sacred gardens, such as the gardens of Zen Buddhist temples, were different from those of pleasure or promenade gardens. For example, Zen Buddhist gardens were designed to be seen while seated from a platform with a view of the whole garden without entering it, while promenade gardens were meant to be seen by walking through the garden and stopping at a series of viewpoints. However, they often contain common elements and used the same techniques, such as miniaturization. The Japanese garden is a miniature and idealized view of nature. Rocks can represent mountains and ponds can represent seas. The garden is sometimes made to appear larger by forced perspective, placing larger rocks and trees in the foreground and smaller ones in the background. Concealment, or hide and reveal. The Zen Buddhist garden is meant to be seen all at once, but the promenade garden is meant to be seen one landscape at a time, like a scroll of painted landscapes unrolling. Features are hidden behind hills, trees, groves, or bamboo, walls or structures, to be discovered when the visitor follows the winding path. Borrowed scenery. Smaller gardens are often designed to incorporate borrowed scenery, the view of features outside of the garden, such as hills, trees, or temples, as part of the view. This makes the garden seem larger than it really is. Asymmetry. Japanese gardens are not laid on straight axes, or with a single feature dominating the view. Buildings and garden features are usually placed to be seen from a diagonal and are carefully composed into scenes that contrast right angles, such as buildings with natural features, and vertical features such as rocks, bamboo, or trees with horizontal features such as water. According to garden historians David and Michigo Young, at the heart of the Japanese garden is the principle that a garden is a work of art. Though inspired by nature, it is an interpretation rather than a copy, and it should appear to be natural but is not wild. Landscaper gardener Sayamon Kusumoto wrote that the Japanese generate the best of nature's handiwork in a limited space. There has been mathematical analysis of some traditional Japanese garden designs. These designs avoid contrasts, symmetries, and groupings that would create points which dominate visual attention. Instead, they create scenes in which visual salience is evenly distributed across the field of view. Standout colors, textures, objects, and groups are avoided. The size of the objects, groupings, and the spacings between them are arranged to be self-similar at multiple spatial scales. That is, they produce similar patterns when scaled up or down, zoomed in or out. This property is also seen in fractals and many natural scenes. This fractal-like self-symmetry may be extended all the way down to the scale of the surface textures, such as those of rocks and moss lawns. These textures are considered to express a wabi-sabi aesthetic. Tea gardens. The tea garden was created during the Muromachi period and the Momoyama period as a setting for the Japanese tea ceremony. The style of the garden takes its name from the roji, or path to the tea house, which is supposed to inspire the visitor to meditation to prepare him for the ceremony. There is an outer garden with a gate and covered arbor where guests wait for the invitation to enter. They then pass through a gate to the inner garden, where they wash their hands and rinse their mouth, as they would before entering a Shinto shrine, before going into the tea house itself. The path is always kept moist and green, so it would look like a remote mountain path, and there are no bright flowers that might distract the visitor from his meditation. Early tea houses had no windows, but later tea houses have a wall which can be opened for a view of the garden. Moving on to our video game. Ghost of Tsushima is a 2020 action-adventure game developed by Sucker Punch Productions and produced by Sony Interactive Entertainment. The player controls Jin Sakai, a samurai on a quest to protect Tsushima Island during the first Mongol invasion of Japan. Jin must choose between following the warrior code to fight honorably or by using practical but dishonorable methods of repelling the Mongols with minimal casualties. The game features a large open world which can be explored either on foot or on horseback. When facing enemies, the player can choose to engage in a direct or confrontation using Jin's katana or to use the stealth tactics to assassinate opponents. A multiplayer mode is available titled Ghosts of Tsushima Legends, was released in October 2020 and is made available separately in September 2021. Sucker Punch began developing the game after the release of Infamous First Light in 2014, as the studio wanted to move on from the Infamous franchise to create a game with heavy emphasis on melee combat. The studio collaborated with Japan Studio and visited Tsushima Island twice to ensure that the game was as culturally and historically authentic as possible. The team was heavily inspired by samurai cinema, particularly films directed by Akira Kurosawa, as well as the comic book series Usagi Yojimbo. The game's landscape and minimalistic art style were influenced by Shadow of the Colossus, and locations in the game were designed to be the perfect photographer's dream. While the in-game landmass is similar in shape to Tsushima Island, the team did not intend to create a one-to-one recreation. Ian Ishikari and Shigeru Umebayashi composed the game's soundtrack. Ghosts of Tsushima was released for the PlayStation 4 July 2020, and an expanded version for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 subtitled Director's Cut and featuring the Ikai Island expansion was released August 2021. A Windows version of the Director's Cut, developed by Nixxes Software, was released in May 2024. The game received positive reviews from critics who praised the melee combat, story, characters, performances, and music, though it received some criticism for its implementations of stealth gameplay and open-world structure. It had sold over 13 million units by September of 2024. It was nominated for several year-end awards, including Game of the Year at the annual The Game Awards and the DICE Awards. A sequel, Ghost of Yote, is scheduled to release October 2025. A film adaptation based on the main game and an anime based on Legends are also in development. Gameplay. Ghost of Tsushima is an action-adventure video game played from a third-person perspective. The player has a variety of gameplay options to reach objectives they are given. They can engage in a standoff, a direct confrontation with enemies using their katana, which can result in a series of fatal strikes against a number of different enemies. In combat, Jin can use different fighting stances to defeat specific types of enemies. Stone stance for hostile swordsmen, water stance for shielded enemies, wind stance for spearmen, and moon stance for brutes. Eventually, the player unlocks Ghost Stance, which makes Jin invincible and allows him to kill enemies with a single hit for a limited period of time. To activate Ghost Stance, players must kill a number of enemies without taking any damage or assassinate a Mongol leader. The player needs to stagger enemies or land successful parries to break their defense before attacking to deplete their health. The player has access to bows, which can fire multiple types of arrows. At certain points in the game, Jin must duel against NPCs, or non-player characters, who act as bosses with unique offensive tactics and attack animations. The game's highest difficulty is more realistic mode in which the player and enemies do large amounts of damage to each other, with all non-boss fights ending in one or two successful attacks. Alternatively, using stealth allows the player to evade enemies and strike them silently with Jin's Tanto. As the player progresses in the game, they can unlock Chained Assassination, which allows Jin to strike several enemies consecutively. To this end, Jin has a large arsenal of ghost weapons. These include firecrackers and wind chime bells to create distractions, smoke bombs to disorient alerted foes, kunai for striking multiple enemies, and explosives to kill groups of enemies. Players will eventually unlock a blowgun that allows them to shoot poison darts and causes victims to hallucinate and attack their peers. When the player restores Jin's health or uses special combat techniques, they deplete their resolve, which is gained by performing feats of finesse, such as assassinating or parrying an enemy. The game features a large open world which can be explored with or without guidance based on wind direction. The 3 islands of Tsushima are unlocked gradually as the player progresses. The island of Izuhara is unlocked first, followed by Totoyama and Kamiyagita. Access to Iki Island is granted to those who purchase the DLC after entering Izuhara. Players travel to different parts of Tsushima on horseback and can use an item that acts as a grappling hook to access difficult-to-reach areas. As the player explores the world, yellow birds will guide Jin to locations of interest. These include hot springs, which increase Jin's maximum health, bamboo strikes, which increase Jin's maximum resolve upon completion, pillars of honor, which contain additional cosmetic designs for Jin's weapons, and locations in which Jin will meditate and compose haiku. By following torii gates and completing a platforming challenge, the player will find Shinto shrines and unlock charms that grant the player passive perks such as decreasing damage taken, reducing enemy detection speed, and increasing how much health is recovered when healing. Foxes will also lead Jin to Inari shrines, which increase the number of charms Jin can equip. The game features side quests and NPCs with whom the player can interact. The players can also liberate Mongol-controlled villages and camps by eliminating all the enemies stationed in the area. Combat stances are unlocked after Jin observes or kills Mongol leaders. Completing side quests or helping NPCs grants players minor charms and gifts that can be collected at altars. In particular, completing Mythic Tale side quests will unlock unique armors and special combat techniques. Each armor set has different properties that provide various benefits during combat. Most sets of armor and clothing can be upgraded by collecting materials found in the game's world. Jin's appearance can also be further customized with masks, helmets, and headbands. Plot: in 1274, a Mongol fleet, led by Koto Khan, invades the Japanese island of Tsushima. The Jito, Lord Shimura, and his nephew Jin Sakai lead an effort by the 5 great families of the island: Clan Shimura, Clan Sakai, Clan Adachi, Clan Nagao, and Clan Kikuchi, to repel the invaders as they land at Kamuda Beach. However, the battle ends in disaster, with the samurai killed by the superior weapons of the Mongols, Shimura captured, and Jin severely wounded and left for dead. He is found and revived by the scavenger Yuna, who informs him that the whole island has fallen to the invaders. Jin storms the Khan's stronghold at Castle Kaneda to rescue Shimura, but is defeated by the Khan and thrown off the castle bridge. Realizing he cannot defeat the Mongols alone, or with traditional samurai tactics, Jin recruits allies and learns guerrilla warfare tactics from Yuna. He recruits Yuna, her blacksmith brother Taka, sake merchant and swindler Kenji, archer Sananobu Ishikawa, female samurai Masako Adachi, and his mercenary friend Ryuzu, along with Ryuzu's straw hat Ronin. As Jin disrupts Mongol activities and liberates villages, The islanders revere him as the Ghost, a samurai spirit that has risen against the Mongols. Taka crafts a grappling hook for Jin to scale Castle Kaneda's walls, and Jin attacks the site with his allies. Destitute and starving from harsh wartime conditions, Ryuzu and the Straw Hats betray Jin to collect the bounty issued to him by the Khan. Jin fends them off, frees Shimura, and retakes Castle Kaneda. Despite their victory, the Khan has already left to conquer Castle Shimura with Ryuzu. Jin recruits the warrior monk Norio, Norio's fellow monks, and the disgraced Yarikawa family to retake Castle Shimura. He also recruits local pirate Goro on Shimura's behalf to carry a petition for reinforcements and a request to be adopted as his heir to the shogun. With a new army being assembled, Jin recovers his family's ancestral armor from the Sakai family caretaker, Yoriko, who teaches him how to create poison. Under orders from Shimura, Jin and Taka try to infiltrate a fortress where Ryuzu is located, but are ambushed and captured by the Khan. When Jin refuses to submit to his rule, the Khan demands that Taka kill him for his freedom. Taka instead attempts to attack the Khan, but is killed and his corpse beheaded. After the Khan leaves, Jin frees himself and eradicates the Straw Hats with Yuna's help. The shogun's reinforcements arrive, and Shimura leads the assembled army to an assault on Castle Shimura, driving the Mongols into the inner keep. As the Mongols retreat, they detonate explosives on the bridge leading to the inner courtyard, inflicting massive casualties on the advancing samurai. Knowing that another frontal attack would only result in more losses, Jin infiltrates the keep to sneak poison into the Mongols' ereg and kill Ryuzo. However, he again misses the Khan, who has retreated into a stronghold in the north. Despite the castle being taken without the samurai suffering any further losses, Shimura is furious with Jin, as his actions have violated the samurai code of honor. Jin retorts by criticizing the ineffectiveness of the code against the dishonorable Mongols. Knowing that the shogun will have Jin executed for treason, Shimura urges him to use Yuna as a scapegoat, but Jin refuses and embraces his persona as the Ghost. Shimura regretfully arrests Jin and burns the decree of adopting Jin as his son. Jin's allies remain loyal to him and help him escape captivity, but his horse is fatally shot by archers in the process. Jin travels north and learns that the Mongols have learned how to craft his poison, which they intend to use in their assault on the Japanese mainland. Before gathering his allies, claiming a new horse, and assaulting the Khan's final stronghold on Port Izumi, Jin leaves a note for Shimura in his castle asking him to join the effort with the samurai, which he does. With the bulk of the Mongol forces distracted, Jin infiltrates the port and kills the Khan on his flagship. There is more, but I will not spoil the ending. Development. Ghost of Tsushima was developed by Sucker Punch Productions, which had a staff count of about 160 at the time of development. Development of the game started in 2014 after the studio completed infamous Second Son and its expansion First Light. After working on the infamous series for 9 years, the studio believed that it was time to create something new. During the conceptualization phase, the studio decided to create an open-world game with a heavy emphasis on melee combat. Before deciding on the setting as feudal Japan, Sucker Punch considered various other settings and themes such as pirates, Scottish outlaw, Rob Roy McGregor, and the Three Musketeers. They later found a historical account of the Mongol invasion of Tsushima in 1274, and the entire vision clicked into place. In 2020, a prototype for one of Sucker Punch's cancelled project, Prophecy, was leaked. Set in a steampunk setting, Prophecy featured gameplay elements that were later carried over to Ghost of Tsushima. Sucker Punch worked on the game for 6 years, the longest ever for a game developed by the studio. The game's development was completed on June 22, 2020, with Sucker Punch confirming it had been declared gold, indicating that it was being prepared for release. Nate Fox served as the game director, while Jason Connell was creative director and art director. Setting and narrative. The Mongol invasion of Tsushima was chosen as the setting because the conflict was easy for people to immediately conceptualize. As the Mongols at the time had the world's most advanced military, there were high stakes that required Jin and therefore the player to intervene. To ensure that the game's world was authentic, the team consulted Japan Studio, a fellow Sony game development team, early in the game's development. Japan Studio was excited about the idea and helped fly approximately 10 members of Sucker Punch to Japan and Tsushima Island for a 10 to 11 day guided tour with a historian. The team visited Japan twice to research Tsushima, once during the summer and again in November, during the anniversary of the invasion. Japan Studios also helped connect Sucker Punch with historians whose team consulted on the history of the invasion and local Japanese customs and traditions. Experts on Japanese dialects, religions during the 13th century, and the recreation of 13th century kanji was also consulted. The team invited Ide Ryutsetsu and Kuwami Masakumo Shike, experts from Samurai Martial Arts School, to perform motion capture for the game and advise the team on sword fighting. Seattle-based historical sword fighting expert David Ishimaru was also involved in the creation of the game's combat style. While the team initially considered introducing real-life historical features into the game, they refrained from doing so after being told by experts that it would be insensitive. Jin's samurai armor and katana are not historically accurate, with his armor based on that of the Sengoku period during the 16th and 17th centuries. According to Chris Zimmerman, one of Sucker Punch's co-founders, samurai armor from the 13th century was jarring-looking and did not align with the player's expectations of what samurai armor would look like. The katana was included in the game since it was considered to be the quintessential icon of samurai. One of the game's Japanese localizers also suggested to the developers that the game's haiku side quest be replaced with a less anachronistic waka side quest, but this was rejected based on the relative recognizability of haiku outside of Japan. One of the core objectives of the developers was to have strong and well-developed characters. Unlike the infamous games, Ghost of Tsushima does not have a character karma system. Its absence allows the team to tell a more cohesive story, which better reflects Jin's transformation from an honorable samurai to a legendary warrior who must sacrifice everything he knows about honor and tradition in order to save Tsushima. Instead of the player being presented with binary choices, as in Infamous, the world and characters react dynamically to Jin's choices in the story, either disapproving of his actions or encouraging them. The team believed that the story would be relatable, as they considered Jin's journey of relinquishing who he was to becoming something new, a universal message that would resonate with modern-day players. Despite this, the player can still switch between the ghost style and samurai style seamlessly, as Jin's roots as a samurai do not change despite his transformation to become the ghost. While the game does not have a karma mechanic, The weather in Tsushima Island becomes more stormy when the player uses ghost techniques more frequently. The game's antagonist, Koto Kan, does not undergo any transformative change. While he is a ruthless invader, he has a bureaucratic aspect, as he attempts to conquer Tsushima Island with minimal bloodshed. Patrick Gallagher joined the cast in 2017 and prepared for the role as Koto Kan by watching The Godfather and drawing on his experience playing Attila the Hun in Night at the Museum. While Fox said that the game was entirely grounded in reality, the team took the liberty to create a fictional narrative. The initial real-world Mongol invasion was foiled by a hurricane, and the team acknowledged this with Jin's katana, which has engraved with storm wind designs. 13 Assassins from Takashi Miike, and films directed by Akira Kurosawa, such as Seven Samurai, Sanjuro, Yokimbo, Redbeard, and Ran, served as major sources of inspiration for the team. The ending of Sanjuro directly inspired the game's standoff gameplay feature, in which a warrior must wait for their counterpart to make the first move and then kill them with one strike. The team tried to replicate the samurai code depicted in Seven Samurais in the game. Additionally, the team reached out to Kurosawa Estate in order to use the director's name for their black and white gameplay mode. The comic book series Usagi Yojimbo which features a soft-mannered rabbit samurai solving various problems for ordinary citizens, also influenced the team. Fox read this comic series when he was working on the Sly Cooper games. The surname of the game's protagonist was a tribute to Stan Sakai, the creator of Yojimbo. A number of video games also inspired the development team. Many of the game's items were inspired by Tenchu, while the option to play as both the ghost and an honorable samurai was influenced by Onimusha warlords. Karateka and Red Dead Redemption were also cited as sources of inspiration. Art and design. The team decided early on that wind blowing around literally everything in the world would be Ghost of Tsushima's visual calling card. This was inspired by early Chanbara samurai films, which often feature movement in the background in the form of dust, smoke, and wind. The team took 1.5 years to ensure that foliage and other objects would react properly to the wind. The team initially added icons and a compass to the game to aid the player's navigation, but they realized that they spent an excessive amount of time looking at them and ignored the in-game world itself. The team then decided to use the wind to guide players to their objectives, forcing the player to observe the world. The team took about a week to create the feature and spent roughly another year further refining it. While implementing this feature, they were inspired by Shadow of the Colossus, in which the player is shown the direction of their objectives when they hold up their sword. Connell added that nature is a symbol for Jin's home, and guidance using the wind served as an important tool for players to connect with Jin's home. According to Fleming, guiding winds also evoked a feeling that nature herself is on the player's side. This aligned with real-world history as well, as Mongol forces were decimated by a typhoon that was seen by the Japanese as a divine wind, sent to protect their home. Many of the game's particle effects and systems were imported from previous infamous games. The team did not intend to create a one-to-one recreation of Tsushima Island. While the in-game landmass is geographically the same shape as that of the Tsushima Island, Sucker Punch took the liberty of creating the game's individual biomes, ensuring that each region is artistically distinct. This allowed the team to create a unique identity for each area, allowing players to recognize them easily even when viewed from afar. This is achieved through the use of bold and vibrant colors when modeling nature. The team also chose the dominant foliage in each area and significantly exaggerated its presence, creating little pockets of massive boldness and beauty. For instance, the team focused on orange and yellow hues for the trees when they were creating the Golden Forest, one of the game's locations, instead of including all types of trees that would realistically grow there. Connell described these locations as one's imagination of what an area would look like and the perfect photographer's dream. Fox added that the landscape featured in the in-game island is more diverse than its real-world counterpart, as the team also incorporated the aesthetics of mainland Japan when they were recreating Tsushima Island. According to Fleming, everything in Japan tends to celebrate negative space. As a result, the team pushed for simplicity from the design of the game's architecture and interiors to minimalistic HUD. Connell added that the art and environment teams had a hard time switching to Ghost of Tsushima after working for 9 years on the infamous games, which feature a punk rock visual style. Ghost of Colossus, nope, that's not what it's called, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild both inspired the game's minimalistic landscape and aesthetic, although the team strived to have a more photorealistic visual to highlight the game's picturesque setting. Much of the game was designed to be serene and tranquil, so that it more sharply contrasted with the moments of violence throughout the game's combat story. The game includes Kurosawa mode, a black and white filter with film grain and adjusted audio, created to honor the legendary Akira Kurosawa and his influential samurai films. To design this mode, the team playtested the game repeatedly using features commonly found in accessibility modes designed for colorblind individuals. Jin's armors were heavily inspired by the armor designs of the Kamakura and Heian periods. These armors were designed to be bulky and colorful, radiating a sense of regality, while contrasting with the darker and more agile Ghost outfit. The team intentionally avoided the traditional assassin design, in which characters are dressed in all black, fully cloth clothing, for the Ghost outfit, in order to make it appear more realistic. Some parts of outfits, such as capes and tassels, responded to the wind, further connecting the player and Jin to the game's world. Peasant recruits often wear leftover armor and have a more ragtag appearance than typical samurai characters. Peasants frequently wear clothes with geometric patterns that reflect their origins. For instance, people living on northern Tsushima wear clothes with snowflake patterns. The game's antagonist, Kuta Khan, has 2 armors, one of which is completely void of color and angular in shape to further signify his oppression and brutality. Audio and music. Brad Mayer served as the game's audio lead. To record the sound of sword fighting, the team used sword blanks previously used in recording sessions for God of War, which was developed by Santa Monica Studio, another Sony developer. According to Mayer, the team spent a lot of time scraping them against each other, clanging them together, swinging them, suspending them from the ceiling, and spinning around them, in order to record interesting sounds. The team also used them to cut through fruits, vegetables, and cloth to create the sound of a sword cutting through the human body. Combat sounds are de-emphasized when the player is exploring and not engaged in combat. Jin's wind chimes were recorded using Japanese furin. The black-naped oriole was chosen as the game's guide bird because it can be found in Japan, and Mayer had the opportunity to record its sound during a vacation in Sri Lanka in 2018. The audio and music system was initially based on that of Infamous Second Son, in which combat music will gradually intensify over 3 different states. However, due to additional gameplay elements found in Ghost of Tsushima, such as Ghost Stance and Standoff, the team was required to create additional states for combat music. British composer Ilan Ishkari wrote the game's music. Ishkari extensively researched Japanese music styles in the 13th century, including Gagaku, Shomyo Buddhist chanting, and Biwa Hoshi. A group of consultants also helped translate lyrics written in English to Japanese. Ishkari was approached by the team after they listened to his work on Coriolanus. The team was particularly impressed with how he was able to recreate Japanese music using Western instruments. Ishkari was initially hesitant since he was not familiar with scoring music for fighting scenes or games, but he agreed after being briefed on the game's narrative. Ishkari learned Japanese scales, played Japanese instruments, and listened to music from Tsushima Island. He also met with Junko Ueda, one of the few surviving musicians who can play a biwa, an instrument used by samurai in the past. It was used in the recording of The Way of the Ghost, Jin's personal theme. Several ancient Japanese melodies, including Tale of the Heike, were also quoted and rearranged by Ishkari. However, he deliberately avoided listening to the musical scores of Kurosawa's films in order to keep his music original. The most difficult track for Ishkari to write was the one for the final battle, as the track needed to be simultaneously action-packed and emotional. Ishkari ultimately wrote double the amount of music that was actually needed. The game also features 5 musical suites by Japanese composer Shigeru Umebayashi, who was responsible for creating the game's exploration music. The full soundtrack of the game was released on July 17, 2020. A 4-track remix EP titled Sound of the Storm, Ghost of Tsushima, Soundtrack Reimagined, that is a mouthful, features contributions from Toki Monsta, Taicho, The Glitch Mob, and Alessandro Cortini. It was released July 10th, 2022 via Milan Records. I chose to play Ghost of Tsushima for the first time for this build, not only because the game has side quests for tranquility such as the haiku and meditation spots, but also the game itself is gorgeous. I would often get distracted by looking at the scenery while riding to destinations. And I would also get distracted by the fact that I was fighting with some pretty bad stick drift from my controller as well. Total build time today, 2 hours, 57 minutes, 43 seconds. You will be able to watch all of Memoirs of a Geisha, another gorgeous piece of art, from 2005 at 145 minutes, and the first episode of the anime, Ouran High School Host Club, each episode being approximately 20 to 22 minutes each, or you could watch 8 episodes of Ouran High School Host Club. Let me know what you think in the section comment below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.